is here. Tannenbaum's got another one of his ideas that you're going to enjoy this morning. And that's not all. We got college football covered on a variety of levels, including the Big Swagoo and a very happy David Pollack, who is live with us from Los Angeles after the game of the night, the blowout of the year, Georgia and TCU for the national championship last night. The opening kickoff went to the Frogs. They would go 3 and out. Georgia would take over, and Stetson Bennett would take it himself.
Ooh, deceptively fast. Touchdown, Stetson Bennett.
He actually is deceptively fast. The Bulldogs up 7-0. It's 10-0, and here was the moment for TCU. A wide open Darius Davis.
Yeah, a lot of attention went to Johnson, their big receiver. Davis wide open the sideline. Nice play.
And TCU gets in the red zone, and that leads to this 3 plays later. This is Max Duggan taking it himself, and I'm thinking, well, maybe we'll have ourselves a game.
You thought wrong.
I did. Oh, boy, did I. That made it 10-7. And then all this happened. Ladd McConkey all by himself.
Why would you cover Ladd McConkey for the big 6?
17-7 Georgia. They're just getting started. Second quarter, same score, 1st and goal. This is too easy. Bennett untouched.
Yeah, they're going on air. It wasn't even that tricky a misdirection, but touchdown.
We got the MJ Shrug 24-7. Next TCU drive. Desperation for Duggan, and he's picked.
Oh, it's an outstanding play. One of several great plays on Bullard.
After the pick, this is a 3rd and 15. Brock Bowers made himself known last night. 152 receiving yards for the big tight end.
Yeah, Bowers a problem, and that was a hell of a throw right there from Bennett.
Bennett would run for 2 and throw 2. Actually, throw 4 last night. First player ever with multiple rushing and passing touchdowns. That's Kendall Milton for a touchdown. Next TCU possession, they're trying to make something happen before halftime. Darius Davis intercepted by Bullard again. Georgia on consecutive drives with turnovers. That leads to this. Here is Bennett. This is Adonai Mitchell. Baruch atah Adonai.
Yeah!
They all wanted me to say it. Georgia with a 38-7 halftime lead. It was during that halftime that David Pollack proclaimed Georgia the kings of college football, with Nick Saban sitting right on the set. 3rd quarter, Bennett, Bowers, 45-7. And that's the way it went. In the end, 65-7 is the final. A 2nd consecutive championship for Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs. After, in the midst of the celebration, the coach had this to say.
We wanted our kids to play without fear. And all year I told them, I said, we ain't getting hunted, guys. We're doing the hunting, and hunting season's almost over. We only got one more chance to hunt, and we hunted tonight.
Brutal, cold execution. That's what that was. That was stone cold killer mentality.
Well, that it certainly was. 58 points is the margin. That's not only the largest ever in a championship game, meaning BCS or CFP, it's the largest winning margin in any bowl game in the history of college football. They've been playing those a really long time, so it was that kind of one-sided. Let's bring David Pollack in here first and foremost, and Swagoo is here, and Dominique. Look, I think Georgia was almost a 2-touchdown favorite, David. The expectation was they were the better team, and if it went their way, they might win somewhat easily. Were even you surprised at just how dominant they were last night?
Well, everybody was surprised at 65-7. Listen, you knew Georgia had the advantages across the board, and we were trying to do the show. We were talking about talent, and you look at Georgia, they had 66 4- and 5-star guys. TCU had 17. So there was a huge discrepancy. Something great had to happen. But just listen to Kirby talk. By the way, they leaked his pregame speech too. And if you want to go run through a wall this morning, go find it and listen to it. I mean, just unbelievable job of ways to find to get their guys motivated, and their talent just won out. Remember last week, Peach Bowl Ohio State was a great game that felt like the national championship as opposed to last night.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 games a week ago Saturday were both magnificent and both came down to the very finish, and then last night we get the blowout. So, Marcus, I'll ask you first, because I feel like it is the legitimate question to ask today. Nick Saban and Alabama have owned the sport for more than a decade. Does college football now belong to Kirby Smart and Georgia?
Yeah, 2-time national champions back-to-back, and a lot of people haven't talked about they've been knocking at the door previously. Like, this has been a consistently good football team. I remember when Nick Chubb and Sony Michel went to California and won a big game and lost to Nick Saban in Alabama. Look, we can determine by history and talk about all of the things that Saban has accomplished at Alabama, or we could live in the now. And when you the two-time back-to-back national champion, you own college football. That's the reality of this game, and then dominant as well. When you look at what Georgia not only did yesterday, but you look at how they were able to overcome things this particular season as being defending national champions. You look at last year and how dominant they were defensively. Offensively, we had questions about Stetson Bennett. He's continued to get better. But more importantly, this is how I determine it. And when you look at Alabama and how they had their run, how many guys can you send to the NFL and still be this good? That is what determines how you take over college football. And right now, that tag belongs to Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs.
It's inarguable. I mean, David, for those who don't know, Georgia had 5 defensive players selected in the first round last year alone, coming off that national championship team. And then back they come and they don't lose a game this year. What does that mean, David? How do you put this into perspective?
5 defensive guys drafted in the first round, 15 guys drafted total. 15. I mean, I didn't think they'd be sitting back in this spot and go undefeated and just reload. It shows you how good Kirby Smart is. It shows you how good they've recruited. It shows you how good they are at building team. Obviously, he learned from a long time from Nick Saban, and he's taken all that knowledge and he's using it, and he's on top of the game. And listen, it's not an insult to Alabama. It just shows you how great Georgia has been when you start to develop that talent. And it took Nick a long time and Alabama a long time to really get great offenses. When Kirby got his quarterback, it's what took him to the next level. When Stetson Bennett became a baller somehow, some way out of nowhere that nobody believed in, and this offense started producing, it went from just a really good one side of the ball, really good defense, and manage the offense, to a team that was almost impossible to beat the last 2 years. And Kirby Smart 33-1 over his last 34 games.
For anyone who turned it off when it went to the half last night, we hope you stayed and watched the entire game. But you did miss what can only be described as a priceless moment.
Yeah.
I want everyone to see, because this went viral last night, David Pollack's description, I think a fully accurate description of the state of college football right now, with our friend Nick Saban sitting right there on the set. Just watch Nick's face as David made this point.
Georgia, obviously, you've seen in the past couple seasons now, really, they've taken hold of college football. They've done an unbelievable job. This is a young football team. This isn't an old football team with a bunch of guys losing. Now, listen, the NFL can take its chunk out of any team.
David, what can you tell us about that exchange?
First of all, I didn't even think about who I was sitting next to when I said that. It had nothing to do with having Nick next to me. But we're at halftime, and y'all know how this works. We got to talk about something, and it dang sure wasn't the game. The game was over. Everybody knew that in the stadium. Everybody knew that at home. So it was like, man, look at what Georgia's done and the dominance. And then, I had nothing to do with taking a shot at Nick. Nick didn't say a word, and he wasn't upset in the slightest bit. So it was not a shot at Nick Saban.
DP, you don't have to explain a damn thing, man. You were being truthful and honest, and we have watched Nick Saban in Alabama say the same type of thing for the last 10 years. Right now, it's Georgia's game. That's what it boils down to. But he will play that highlight 1,000 times next year in his locker room and during preseason.
I will remind everyone that Marcus Spears won a national championship playing for Nick Saban at LSU. So if anyone knows, he knows. Very quickly, just a quick final thought on this, because Alabama, we act like, well, they're a thing of the past. I mean, they did just have a dominant bowl performance, and they were basically 2 plays away from having a perfect season this year. They never got their crack at Georgia. David, they're not going away, right? I mean, as people start talking about a three-peat, which has never happened and everything, it is still Nick Saban who will have something to say about that. Yes?
Yeah, and he just had the greatest recruiting class ever. So Alabama's not going anywhere. They've got plenty of talent. You saw the way they finished the bowl game. But this Georgia team's coming back. It's going to be loaded. But like Kirby talked about, fighting complacency, I don't think we're done seeing Nick versus Kirby in big games, and we'll probably see it next year in the SEC championship game with a lot on the line.
Dominic, give us any takeaway you have from last night and the season and the state of college football.
I enjoyed last night thoroughly. It was great. But more than anything, say it with your chest, David. Don't get nervous on me. Georgia owns college football, and you are not afraid of Alabama. Let's go.
I'm not afraid, but I just want to make sure I wasn't trying to dunk on Saban. That wasn't something that I was trying to